Everything is in order, Captain. You're clear to proceed.
Thank you, officer. Have a good day.
Blue lights slashed through the night like blades. Marcus Avery's hands stayed locked at 10 and 2. His pulse thudding under the sterile hum of the cockpit-style dashboard. He'd just landed a red-eye into Atlanta, exhaustion heavy in his shoulders. Still in uniform, Navy flight suit, patches crisp, boots dusted from the tarmac. The siren died. A flashlight flooded his face. License and registration, the officer said, voice clipped, the vowels sharp with authority. Marcus lowered the window halfway. Evening, officer. What's the problem? The beam shifted, tracing his chest insignia. Then the cop's lips curled. You rent that uniform for Halloween, or they let just anyone wear that now. A muscle jumped in Marcus's jaw. The words hit harder than the cold night air. I'm a pilot, he said evenly. The officer leaned in, the smell of coffee and arrogance thick. Sure you are. Step out of the car. Marcus hesitated a breath too long. Now, the cop snapped, hand grazing the butt of his holstered weapon. Marcus stepped out, calm, practiced from years of briefings and turbulence. The ground was damp. A camera phone flickered on across the street. Hands where I can see M. His ID slid from his pocket, landing in a puddle. The Air Force emblem catching the streetlight. The officer's eyes flicked down. Recognition dawned. Too late. Sir, A second cruiser pulled up fast. Tires screaming. Marcus's breath clouded the air. The night froze, sirens echoing like judgment. Everything was about to break. The road from Hartsfield-Jackson was quiet. Late night rain, reflections of neon in the puddles. Marcus Avery's body ached from 10 hours in the air. The smell of jet fuel still clung to his clothes. He rolled the window down, breathing in Georgia air, damp, electric, alive. Then the siren cut through everything. He pulled over, practiced calm, always calm. The cruiser stopped inches from his bumper. A flashlight snapped on, white light carved across his face. License and registration. Marcus handed over both. Evening, officer. What's wrong? The cop didn't answer. He studied the name on the license, then Marcus's uniform. You military? Yes, sir. Air Force pilot. The smirk was small but sharp. That's so. Step out for me. Marcus blinked. Did I do something wrong? Step out, he obeyed. Slow, deliberate, hands visible, boots on wet asphalt. He'd faced turbulence worse than this, but never turbulence that looked him in the eye and smirked. Pop the trunk, Keller said. There's nothing in there except pop it. He did. The officer shone his light inside. Flight bag, helmet, folded jacket. Nice costume. Marcus exhaled through his nose. That's government property. Sure it is. Keller circled the car. Where you headed, Captain? Home, big house, huh? Marcus didn't answer. You people always got a story, Keller muttered. The words weren't shouted, whispered, meant to sting. Think that badge on your chest makes you special. It's not a badge, Marcus said quietly. It's a rank. Keller stopped walking. The silence between them thickened. The rain fell harder. A second cruiser slowed beside them. Back up, Keller said into his radio, not looking at him. Possible impersonation of military personnel. Marcus felt the world tilt, the absurdity, the danger. He held his hands up slightly. Officer, my credentials are in the glove hands where I can see them. Headlights from the second cruiser blinded him. Another officer stepped out, cautious, curious. Keller gestured toward Marcus. Claims he's Air Force. The newcomer looked closer. That patch, that's legit, Keller. Could be fake. It's not. Marcus said, you can call the base, Dover Air, they'll confirm. The two officers exchanged a look, authority wrestling with ego. Let's verify that, Keller said, tight voice, as if swallowing something bitter. Until then, he's not free to go. Marcus stood in the rain, motionless. Water slid from his cap, down his jaw. The blue lights painted him like a target. Inside the patrol car, Keller's radio crackled, static. Then, confirmed, Captain Marcus Avery, Air Mobility Command. Silence. The second officer turned slowly. He's clean. Keller's jaw twitched. Copy. Marcus lowered his hands. Can I leave now? Keller hesitated. His eyes flicked to the camera phone still recording from across the street. He stepped closer, voice low. Next time, don't act so damn confident. Makes people nervous. Marcus met his stare. Maybe they should ask why. The words hung there, sharp, heavy, irreversible. Keller turned away, muttering something Marcus couldn't hear. The cruiser lights cut off. Darkness reclaimed the road. Marcus climbed back into his car, chest tight, adrenaline burning through exhaustion. He started the engine, headlights catching the puddle where his ID had fallen. The Air Force emblem gleamed, faint, resilient, unbroken. He didn't notice the red recording light across the street still on, still watching. The fluorescent lights at the precinct hummed, cold, colorless, merciless. Marcus sat on a metal bench, wrists resting on his knees. His uniform had dried in stiff creases, the damp smell of rain mixed with disinfectant. Around him, the air vibrated with low laughter, the sound of paper shuffling, and the hollow echo of boots on tile. Name. The booking officer didn't look up. Captain Marcus Avery. A pause, then the faint click of a pen. Militaria. The man smirked as if it were a punchline. Occupation. Pilot. That right? Yes. Occupation, the officer repeated, tapping the form. Not fantasy. Marcus said nothing. Silence was the only defense that didn't escalate. Across the room, Keller leaned against a filing cabinet, arms crossed. His voice carried just enough. Guy was twitchy, he said to another cop. Didn't like the tone. You know how they get. Marcus's hands curled slightly. They, always, that word, a shape used to cage a man. An officer approached. You're being held for verification, Captain. Routine procedure. Marcus's voice was calm, but it sliced through the noise. Routine would have been checking my credentials. Roadside. The officer hesitated. You'll get your call in a minute. Minutes turned to nearly an hour. Keller passed by twice, each time with the smug gait of a man certain he'd be protected. Finally, a new figure entered. Captain Hale, the station supervisor. Gray hair, crisp shirt, the air of someone who'd memorized departmental phrasing. What's the issue here? Hale asked. Keller gestured toward Marcus, stopped him outside the airport, claimed to be military, wouldn't comply at first. Marcus lifted his chin. I complied fully. I presented ID, license, and registration. Officer Keller dismissed them. Hale's eyes flicked to Keller. Just a flicker, enough to register discomfort before it vanished behind bureaucracy. Let's see the credentials. Marcus handed over the documents. Hale examined them, frowning. This checks out. Dover Air. Yes, sir. Hale exhaled through his nose. Slow. You can release him. Keller frowned. He was agitated. Release him. Keller swallowed the order, unlocking the side gate. The metallic click echoed too loud in the sterile room. Marcus stood. That's it. Hale's tone softened by a hair. Look, these things happen. Miscommunication. No harm intended. Marcus's eyes narrowed. No harm. The words cut. The room quieted. Someone at a desk stopped typing. Hale's mouth opened, then closed again. The silence stretched until it cracked. Captain Avery, he said finally, tone bureaucratically gentle. You're free to go. Marcus stared a moment longer, then nodded once. He walked past Keller, slow, deliberate, their shoulders nearly brushed. Keller's smirk faltered for the first time. Outside, the night air hit him like a release valve. His breath trembled once, before he mastered it. The lot was empty except for his car, under the harsh white glow of a street lamp. He slid inside, sat still for a long moment, hands on the wheel. The digital clock read to 47 a.m. He dialed his sister, Marcus. Lena's voice cracked through the receiver, groggy but alert. They detained me. Silence, then sharper. What? Local PD officer named Keller said I looked suspicious. You showed I did. Didn't matter until his supervisor showed. Jesus, Marcus. He cut her off softly. Don't, not now. She breathed audibly on the other end, fury restrained. You okay? He looked at his reflection in the windshield, jaw tight, eyes hollow. Define okay. Her voice steadied. Document everything. Names, times, what they said. I will. Marcus. Her voice softened. You know what comes next. I know. He hung up before the conversation could turn into comfort. Comfort was a luxury. Clarity was the only tool left. He drove home through empty streets. The city slept, indifferent. Rain streaked down traffic lights like tears on glass. At a stoplight, he caught his own reflection in the side mirror, the faint imprint of handcuff marks, ghosting his wrist. No harm intended. He repeated the phrase, silently, as if testing its weight. It felt obscene. His phone buzzed, a text from a colleague. Saw something online. You good? Marcus frowned, opened the link. A grainy video loaded. Streetlight glow. Keller's voice audible, sharp and smug. You rent that uniform for Halloween. Then, the flash of his eye in the puddle, the emblem gleaming. The camera shook, zooming in. The video cut off just before the backup arrived. Marcus stared. The caption read, "Black pilot harassed by police outside airport. Viewer discretion advised." His stomach sank down. He replayed it once, twice. His own silence on the recording contained made him look almost mechanical. The comments were already multiplying, some outraged, some mocking, some demanding context that would never matter. He closed the app, leaned back, exhaling through his teeth. There would be no sleep tonight. He reached for his flight jacket, still damp from the rain, and hung it neatly on the chair. The patch, the same one Keller had mocked, caught the dim light. Then he sat, elbows on knees, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Tomorrow, he knew, would be the real turbulence. Marcus woke to the sound of his phone vibrating against the nightstand, again and again. Relentless. The clock read 6:12 a.m. He hadn't slept. His phone screen glowed with dozens of notifications, missed calls, news alerts, unknown numbers. The bystander's video had detonated overnight. He opened one message from his squadron mate. "It Harmon. Bro, you're all over the internet. That cop's toast." He opened another from a reporter. "Captain Avery. This is Maya Torres with Channel 8. We'd like your comment on the video circulating." He stopped reading. The room spun with too many voices, too much noise. The world had found him before he'd even decided whether he wanted to be found. A knock sounded at the door, 3 sharp taps. "Marcus, open up, it's me." He recognized his sister's voice immediately. When he opened the door, Lena stood there, in a tailored suit, hair tied back, eyes already burning with purpose. She held a tablet under her arm. "You saw it?" she asked. He nodded. "Can't not." She stepped inside, scanning the small apartment, clean, bare, efficient. Her lawyer's mind was already moving. "Do you realize this is evidence now? That video's timestamp matches your detainment, the officer's name, his words, his conduct, all on record." "Evidence of what?" Marcus asked quietly. "That I was humiliated and then released. Evidence of misconduct." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You think that matters?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, it matters." He didn't respond. The silence stretched out. Lena set the tablet on the counter and pressed play. The video looped again. Keller's taunt, the light on Marcus's face, the flash of the Air Force emblem. Then, that final moment before the camera cut, his voice, calm and contained. "Maybe they should ask why." The line had already gone viral. Hashtags multiplying. Hashtag ask why. Hashtag pilot wild. Hashtag Marcus Avery. Lena's voice softened. "You didn't plan to become a statement. But here we are." Marcus rubbed his temples. "You think I want to spend my days explaining that I'm not the stereotype in their heads?" "No," she said. "But silence will let them define you for you." His phone buzzed again. A new message. "Colonel Briggs. Need to discuss situation. PR office monitoring developments. Advise no media engagement until cleared." Marcus read it twice, jaw tightening. "They want me quiet." "Of course they do," Lena said. "That's how institutions protect themselves. Contain the damage." He set the phone down hard. "I'm not their damage." Lena smiled, faintly proud, but sad. "Then make them remember that." He looked at her, the sister who'd spent her life fighting courtrooms full of men who dismissed her. "And if I do, what then?" "They'll twist it. They'll say I was confrontational, that I provoked him." Her tone sharpened. "Marcus, you did nothing wrong. You followed orders. You complied. You still got treated like a threat." He stared out the window, where morning light broke through low clouds, pale gold over wet streets. "And yet here we are. I have to defend my own existence again." The TV flickered on in the background. News anchor spoke in polished concern. "The video, taken outside Atlanta International Airport, appears to show a police officer confronting an Air Force pilot identified as Captain Marcus Avery." Cut to Keller's police photo. Clean, confident, smiling. Then to Marcus's official service portrait, cropped from the Air Force website. "The department has announced an internal procedural review. Officer Keller has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Marcus turned off the TV. The silence afterward felt heavier than the noise. "Leave," he said bitterly. "That's what they call vacation with pay." Lena studied him. "You're angry. Shouldn't I be?" "Yes, but don't let them weaponize that. They want you to snap, to fit their narrative." He met a gaze, eyes hard. "So I'm supposed to stay composed while the world debates whether my humanity was inconvenient?" "No," she said quietly. "You stay composed so they can't erase what they did." The apartment phone rang, the landline he barely used. Marcus hesitated before picking up. Captain Avery, a woman's voice said, professional, distant. This is Captain Monroe from Public Affairs. The Air Force requests you refrain from interviews or public statements until our communications team provides guidance. We're protecting you, sir. He almost laughed. Protecting me, or protecting optics. A pause. Then the line went dead. He set the receiver down carefully. Lena shook her head. They're closing ranks. You'll be their symbol, not their soldier. Marcus sank onto the couch, hands clasped. Then maybe the symbol's all I have left. Lena sat beside him, her voice low but fierce. Then we use it. We file the complaint. We push it public. We force their hand. Marcus looked at her, at the fire she carried like oxygen, and said nothing. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, the same pitch that had started it all. The sound cut through the morning like a scar that refused to heal. He reached for his cap on the table, turned it over in his hands. The Air Force insignia caught the light, still shining, but scratched. He whispered, not to her, not to anyone. They don't get to own the sky. Lena heard it anyway. The hum of the phone started again, messages piling, voices gathering, the storm building around his silence. This time, Marcus didn't reach to stop it. The conference room smelled of burnt coffee and unease. A long table stretched between Marcus and a row of police officials, neutral expressions rehearsed, eyes heavy with politics. The department's internal affairs officer, Lieutenant Carden, sat at the head, clipboard ready. Captain Avery Carden began, tone clipped. We appreciate your cooperation. This review is about clarity, not blame. Marcus's jaw flexed. Clarity's easy when the video's public. Across the table, Keller sat in uniform, expression carefully constructed, contrite but unbroken. The faint bruise of sleepless nights marked his eyes, yet the arrogance lingered in the way he leaned back, arms loose, confident in the machinery around him. Carden cleared his throat. We're aware of the footage. However, context matters. Officer Keller responded to what he perceived as suspicious activity near a transportation hub. That's a sensitive security area. Marcus's voice was calm but sharp. Suspicious activity meaning existing while black. Carden's pen paused mid. No one's suggesting that. You don't have to. The tape speaks louder than your report. Keller shifted, leaning forward now. I followed protocol. He didn't comply immediately. Marcus met his eyes. I complied. You escalated. Your tone was hostile. My tone. Marcus's laugh was low, incredulous. You had your hand on your gun, Officer Keller. My tone wasn't the threat. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. Carden raised a hand. Gentlemen, let's stay professional. Marcus's gaze didn't move. Professionalism's a uniform you wear. Integrity's a choice. The silence that followed was long, brittle. Carden scribbled something on his clipboard that didn't matter. The outcome was already written. Damage control disguised as due process. Afterward, in the hallway, Lena caught up with Marcus. She'd attended as counsel, silent during proceedings but vibrating with anger. They're stonewalling, she said. They'll close this as procedural misunderstanding. Marcus rubbed his temple. They always do. She exhaled. You saw Keller's smirk. That's a man who's been covered before. He nodded. Then we pulled the records. File FOIA requests, internal memos, complaint logs. Lena's eyes flicked to him. You sure you're ready for that fight? I've been fighting it my whole life, he said. They exited into bright afternoon sunlight, cameras waiting across the street. Reporters shouted questions. Captain Avery, do you believe the officer was racially motivated? Has the Air Force taken disciplinary action? Do you plan to sue? Marcus said nothing, but the silence played better on camera than any speech could. His calmness had become its own message. Defiance, without noise. Back inside the precinct, Keller watched from the window above, jaw tight. Detective Harlan entered, closing the door behind him. You're not saying another word to IA, Harlan warned. Union's already prepping your defense. Stick to the script. Miscommunication, safety protocol, high alert postures. Keller exhaled through his nose. They're turning this into politics. Everything's politics. Harlan stepped closer. You've got the union, the chief, the mayor. Stay quiet. Stay disciplined, and this fades. Keller nodded, though a shadow crossed his face. And the video. Harlan smirked. Public outrage dies faster than memory. Always does. But that evening, Keller's phone buzzed. An anonymous message. You're lucky that body cam malfunctioned. He stared at it, pulse jumping. Then another followed. How many times has it malfunctioned, Keller? He turned off the phone, staring at the wall until his reflection blurred in the glass. Across town, Marcus sat in his apartment, rereading his statement draft. Every word felt sterile: incident, interaction, unfortunate misunderstanding, language designed to drain meaning from experience. He deleted it all and began again. On October 17th, I was stopped for existing in a uniform that should have meant respect. Instead, it marked me as a suspect. This isn't about one officer, it's about a system that confuses fear with authority. He paused, reading it aloud. The words tasted like something finally true. Lena called. Press wants a comment. I can filter requests. Let them wait, he said. I'll speak when I'm ready. She hesitated. They'll fill the silence with their own stories. Then let them. I'm not here to entertain their outrage cycle. He stood, staring out the window at the blinking city lights. The illusion of order built on layers of control. Somewhere, Keller slept soundly behind that illusion, confident in its walls. Marcus wasn't planning to break them with noise. He'd break them with facts. 2 days later, Lena called again. Her voice was tight, urgent. We found something. Keller's been cited 3 times before racial bias complaints, all dismissed. Marcus's pulse quickened. You sure? Documents from internal records. Someone leaked them. Who? No name, just a message attached. Tell him truth leaks too. Marcus leaned against the counter, staring at the phone. The walls around Keller were starting to crack. The call came just after dawn, short, clipped, rehearsed. Captain Avery, this is Colonel Briggs. I'm afraid we're placing you on temporary non-flight status pending the outcome of ongoing investigations. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, the morning light cutting through the blinds in pale stripes. I'm being grounded. Briggs hesitated. Not disciplinary, administrative, standard protocol when personnel become subjects of media attention. Media attention caused by what they did. Sir, I understand, Captain, but command must maintain public neutrality. Optics matter. Understood. The word left his mouth like ash. After the call ended, Marcus stayed still, staring at the faint reflection of his face in the black coffee. The silence of the apartment pressed in. No engine hum, no radio chatter, no sky, just stillness, the cruelest punishment for a man built to move. The news looped in the background. Keller's department promising full transparency, spokespeople smiling with polished rehearsals, analysts debating procedure like it was a game of semantics. Was the officer's response excessive, or simply misunderstood within tense conditions? Did Captain Avery's behavior escalate the situation unintentionally? Marcus muted the TV. The air felt heavy with words meant to erase. The phone buzzed again. Lena, they grounded you. Effective immediately. She swore under her breath. They're protecting themselves. Distance equals deniability. He rubbed his temple. They think silence equals control. Then we'll make noise, she said. He didn't answer. He stood, walked to the window, watched planes lifting off in the distance. Each one cut through the sky like defiance. Later that morning, he met Lena at a small cafe near the courthouse. Cameras lingered outside but kept their distance. Lena slid a file across the table. Keller's disciplinary record, she said quietly. 3 prior complaints, all labeled unsubstantiated, 2 involved black drivers, 1 off-duty incident, bar altercation. Marcus skimmed the pages, and no consequences. None that made it to his file, but the language tells the story. He read the lines. No corroborating witnesses. Subject's demeanor contributed to escalation. Officer exercised discretion consistent with training. Marcus closed the folder. They write bias like poetry. Lena nodded, and every stanza rhymes with cover-up. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. So what now? We escalate. File with the state attorney. Go public. He hesitated. You want to turn me into a headline? She looked at him sharply. You already are one. The difference is whether you control it. The tension between them thickened. 2 different kinds of warriors. Both tired of fighting wars that never ended. Marcus broke the silence. What if it backfires? What if they paint me as angry, ungrateful? Then, let them, she said. They've been painting you since birth. Time you picked the colors. He almost smiled. Almost. That afternoon, a reporter called the same woman from Channel 8, Maya Torres. This time, he answered, Captain Avery, thank you for speaking with me. Off the record, I want you to know, your story's changing people. People like stories more than truth, he said. Then give them both, she replied. We'll air your interview uncut. No edits, no spin. He hesitated. Then, tomorrow, my place, Early. Understood. He hung up and sat back, staring at the ceiling. The decision felt like turbulence, sudden, stomach-deep, irreversible. That night, Keller's name resurfaced in the news. The department's union representative appeared on camera, calling him a dedicated officer unfairly targeted by online outrage. Keller himself gave no statement, just a photo. His smile strained this time. Office watched in silence. The narrative was shifting, not toward truth, but toward balance. That corporate illusion, where every injustice gets equal weight at 2 a.m. He opened his laptop and began writing again. Not a statement, a record. They took my wings before proving I'd done anything wrong. They called it protocol, not punishment. But grounding a pilot is never neutral. It's an act of containment. Keep him from rising, while they rewrite the story below. He saved it, closed the laptop, and sat in the dark. When morning came, the reporter arrived early, precise, carrying calm-like armor, cameras set up, microphones clipped. She looked at him. You ready? No, he said honestly, but I'll talk anyway. The interview began simply. She asked, what did you feel that night? Marcus didn't blink. Invisible. She nodded. And now, exposed, he said. Different kind of visibility. Same cage. Her next question came quiet. Do you still believe in the system that did this to you? He thought a long time before answering. I believe in truth. Systems just try to survive it. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, undeniable. Hours later, when the interview aired, the internet ignited again, but this time, it wasn't outrage, it was recognition. Marcus watched from his darkened living room as his own image flickered on the screen, steady, tired, human. He turned off the TV. The sky outside was streaked with contrails, lines drawn by others still flying. He whispered to no one, they can ground me, doesn't mean I've landed. The municipal building smelled of polished wood and tension. Reporters crowded the steps, microphones angled toward the doorway where Marcus and Lena approached side by side. He wore his dress, blues pressed, immaculate, deliberate. Every crease was armor. Inside, the hearing chamber buzzed, board members murmuring, union reps whispering, the hum of legal machinery ready to grind truth into procedure. At the front, a banner read, Citizen Review Board Public Inquiry. Officer Keller sat to the right, his lawyer beside him, posture upright, expression perfectly neutral. Marcus felt the weight of that stillness, not remorse, not fear, just calculation. A clerk called the room to order. Captain Marcus Avery versus Officer Thomas Keller, Atlanta Police Department, commencing 0900 hours. The chairwoman, Ms. Donnelly, adjusted her glasses. Captain Avery, you'll have the opportunity to give your account. Please remain factual and composed. Lena leaned in, whispering, don't hold back the truth to make them comfortable. Marcus nodded once, then stood. His voice carried steady, trained, each word shaped by years of briefings and command reports. But this time, every syllable came from something deeper. On October 17th, I was stopped without cause, leaving the airport. I presented my identification immediately. I was insulted, detained, and accused of impersonating military personnel despite clear evidence to the contrary. I remained compliant. I was still treated as a threat. He paused. The microphones captured his breathing. The officer called for backup. Even after my identity was confirmed, I was not released until his superior arrived. No apology, no recognition of misconduct, just silence and dismissal. He looked at Keller, not with anger, but with exhaustion that had calcified into clarity. This wasn't about confusion. It was about perception. To him, my skin erased my credentials. Keller's lawyer rose. Objection, Madam Chair. Speculative motive. Donnelly raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Marcus nodded. That's all I have. The video tells the rest. The clip played on the overhead monitor, flickering light. Keller's voice sharp and casual. You rent that uniform for Halloween. The line echoed in the chamber, raw and irrefutable. Gasps. Murmurs, the shifting of papers that couldn't hide discomfort. When the lights returned, Keller's lawyer stood. Officer Keller was performing his duty under heightened security conditions. The complainant's behavior appeared evasive. Miscommunication ensued. Regrettable, yes, but not malicious. Lena rose before Marcus could respond. Her voice was sharp as glass. Miscommunication doesn't draw a weapon. Miscommunication doesn't laugh while a man stands in uniform explaining his existence. This wasn't confusion. It was bias, practiced into instinct. Carden from Internal Affairs sat 2 rows back, eyes fixed on the floor. Keller spoke for the first time, tone practiced. I was following procedure. I regret that Captain Avery felt disrespected. Lena turned to him. He didn't feel disrespected. Officer Keller, he was disrespected. Keller's jaw clenched. I acted in good faith. Marcus finally spoke again. You acted in arrogance. The room froze. The words hit like turbulence, unexpected, undeniable. Donnelly interjected softly. Captain Avery, please. He straightened. No disrespect intended, but the truth doesn't soften itself for comfort. A pause. Then Donnelly nodded once, an unspoken acknowledgement that he was right. The questioning continued for hours. Keller's lawyer tried to pick at Marcus's tone, his movements, his potential non-compliance. Lena countered each attempt with precision, citing timestamps procedure, Keller's prior complaints, the ones that had conveniently vanished from official summaries but not from the leak. Finally, Donnelly folded her hands. We've heard enough. The board withdrew to deliberate. The room emptied into tense murmurs. Marcus sat, elbows on knees, eyes on the floor. Lena leaned close. You did exactly what you needed to. He shook his head. They'll call it inconclusive, maybe. But the truth's not inconclusive anymore. After 30 minutes, the board returned. Donnelly read from a prepared statement, voice steady but brittle. The board finds insufficient evidence to determine racial bias as motive. However, procedural violations occurred, including improper escalation and failure to verify identification. Officer Keller will face administrative review and retraining. This concludes the hearing. The words landed like dull blows. Insufficient evidence. Retraining. Keller exhaled softly, relief flickering across his features. His lawyer patted his shoulder. Lena whispered, they gave him a seminar instead of accountability. Marcus stood. They always do. He walked toward the exit, flashes already bursting outside the door. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. Captain Avery, your reaction to the ruling. Do you believe justice was served? He stopped on the steps, facing the cameras. His voice was low but carried over the crowd. Justice isn't what happens in that room. Justice is what people refuse to forget. The crowd hushed. For a second, the city noise seemed to stop. Then the shouting resumed, louder, frantic, but he was already walking away. Inside the station, Keller remained seated after everyone left. Harlan approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're lucky, Harlan said quietly. They gave you a slap, not a scar. Keller didn't answer. He stared at the table, at his reflection warped in the polished wood. Feels like the air changed. Harlan frowned. Forget it. You'll be back on duty in a week. Keller nodded slowly, but the look in his eyes said he knew something had shifted beyond repair. That night, the hearing aired on national news. The clip of Marcus saying justice is what people refuse to forget went viral again, this time with captions, music, commentary. Lena called him, you just made them remember. He was sitting on his porch, watching airplanes climb into the night sky, contrails dissolving into the dark. Maybe remembering's all we can do, he said. Sometimes, Lena replied, that's where justice begins. He didn't answer. The sky above him was clear, wide, indifferent. For the first time in weeks, Marcus didn't feel rage, just gravity, the pull of truth, slow but certain, dragging everything false toward exposure. He knew the system wasn't done trying to bury it, but the silence had cracked, and cracks spread. The morning after the hearing, Marcus woke to the sound of his phone vibrating against the nightstand, relentless, insistent. He blinked at the screen. Lena, 12 missed calls. The next buzz came with a message. Check channel 4. Now. He reached for the remote. The TV flickered to life. Keller's face filled the screen, not from the hearing, but from a new video, body cam footage someone had leaked in full. It wasn't just the traffic stop. The recording extended far beyond the incident report. Keller's voice was clear, mocking, confident. Guy thinks a uniform makes him special. They always do. Bet the Air Force lets anyone in now. Then laughter, not just Keller's and other officers. Off camera. The segment cut to a news anchor. The Atlanta Police Department has not commented on the footage, which appears to contradict statements made under oath during yesterday's hearing. Marcus sat still. His stomach felt hollow. The truth was finally public, not through procedure, but exposure. The phone rang again. This time, he answered. Marcus, Lena said, breathless. It's everywhere. Someone inside the department leaked it. The clip's being picked up by CNN and Reuters. They're calling for Keller's suspension. He exhaled slowly. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Maybe not, she said. But this is how the system finally listens when it's cornered. Outside, a line of news vans had already formed in front of his house. Reporters on lawns, cameras pointed toward his door. A knock sounded. 3 firm raps. Lena's voice came through the phone. Don't open it for them. I'm on my way. He set the phone down. The knocking came again, louder. He opened the door anyway. A woman in a navy blazer stood there, credentials around her neck. Captain Avery, I'm with the Atlantic. We'd like your comment before we publish. Do you believe this leak was orchestrated by supporters in the department? He stared at her, eyes tired but steady. I don't deal in speculation, only facts. Then what's the fact here, Captain? He hesitated, then said, the fact is, when institutions protect lies, truth finds another route. The quote would lead the evening broadcast. By noon, protests had started outside the precinct. Signs, chants, phones raised. Justice for Marcus. Bias in blue. Inside, Keller watched from a narrow window. He hadn't been suspended yet, but his badge had been temporarily surrendered pending review. Harlan entered quietly. Internal Affairs call. They're digging deeper. Keller didn't turn. They'll hang me for PR. Maybe, Harlan said. Or maybe this time they actually mean it. Keller turned then, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. You think they mean anything? They'll sacrifice one name to save the uniform. Harlan frowned. Then you'd better decide if you're the name. At the same time, Lena and Marcus sat in a quiet corner of a cafe, blinds half drawn. She opened her laptop. They're saying the footage came from someone inside. IA, anonymous. Keller's records being reviewed, apparently. He's had multiple complaints buried under insufficient cause. Marcus stirred his coffee. That's the pattern. Same language, different decade. Lena looked at him carefully. You're calm? He nodded. Because this isn't my victory. It's exposure, and exposure burns everyone, even the ones who wanted the fire. She closed the laptop. They'll try to spin it. The department, the union, the city. They'll all call it an isolated incident. Then we don't let them, by not letting them forget the tape or the silence before it. That night, the city's skyline glowed under floodlights from news choppers. Crowds filled the streets around police headquarters. Reporters shouted questions as officials released statements about administrative integrity, public trust, and community outreach. Keller, escorted out of the building, faced the wall of cameras. Officer Keller, a reporter yelled. Do you deny the statements on tape? He said nothing. The silence was worse than denial. It was resignation. Lena watched the coverage from Marcus's living room. He's done, she said. Marcus didn't reply. He stood by the window, watching headlights drift across the tarmac of the distant airport. No one's done, he said. He'll be replaced. The system doesn't end with one man. Lena turned to him. Then what do? We keep showing it for what it is, over and over, until denial becomes impossible. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number, he answered. A low voice said, Captain Avery, this is Sergeant Ruiz, Internal Affairs. We wanted you to know, Keller's been terminated pending criminal investigation. And Captain, thank you. Marcus didn't speak. The line went quiet, then disconnected. Lena asked, was that what I think it was? He nodded once. They finally said it. Outside, fireworks, not celebration, but protesters lighting flares in the night, red against blue, smoke curling upward like something finally exhaled. Marcus stepped outside, into the glow. The air smelled of ozone and asphalt. For the first time, the cameras weren't pointed at him, they were pointed with him, toward the building that had once buried the truth. He didn't raise a fist, he didn't wave, he just stood there, silent, steady, present, as the crowd chanted his name, not as a symbol, but as proof. The story was no longer his alone. 2 weeks later, the world had moved on, or pretended to. The protests thinned, news feeds cycled to new crises, hashtags cooled, but the air in Atlanta still carried a charge. Like static before lightning. Marcus sat in his living room surrounded by unopened envelopes, letters from strangers, support, accusations, invitations to speak. The noise of public sympathy, temporary, conditional. He turned one over, then another. Each line blurred into the same phrase. Thank you for your courage. He wasn't sure what that meant anymore. The TV in the background replayed Keller's arrest footage. Grainy, distant. The same anchors who had once defended procedure now used words like disgrace, Betrayal, Culture of Bias. Lena arrived without knocking. She dropped her bag by the door. You've been ignoring calls from CNN, MSNBC, The Times. I'm not a headline, he said quietly. She crossed her arms. You're a symbol, whether you like it or not. He looked up, eyes shadowed. Symbols can't sleep. I want my life back, not a movement. Movements don't ask permission. Marcus, they form around whoever stands when no one else will. He didn't respond. Outside, the sky hung gray low. Planes rose through it, small dots swallowed by cloud. Lena sat across from him. You know Keller's pressing for a plea deal. He nodded. They'll let him walk with probation. Maybe a fine. She sighed. You don't even sound angry anymore. I spent all my anger in that parking lot, he said. Everything since then's been the echo. Silence stretched. Then Lena leaned forward. The Pentagon called. They want you to address the cadets next month. Topic: Leadership under bias. He looked at her sharply. You set that up. They reached out to me after the hearing. I said you'd think about it. He hesitated, then stood, pacing. Every time I speak, I lose another piece of myself to the narrative. She watched him. Then make the narrative yours. The words hung between them, heavy. True. Meanwhile, Keller sat in his lawyer's office downtown. The city's hum seeping through the blinds. The lawyer scrolled through documents. You understand what a guilty plea means, Thomas. Keller rubbed his temples. Do I look like I have a choice? Plea, and they'll drop the civil rights enhancement. You'll serve 6 months in county, maybe less. Without it, they'll go federal. Keller stared out the window. Across the street, a protest mural was being painted, Marcus's silhouette against a flag backdrop. 6 months, Keller muttered. 6 months, for ruining a man's life. The lawyer didn't answer. Keller exhaled. Yeah, I'll take the deal. When Marcus heard the news that night, he didn't react. Lena watched him carefully. Doesn't feel like justice, does it? He shook his head. Justice isn't sentencing, it's awareness. But awareness doesn't sleep either. Later, he drove to the airfield alone. The tarmac gleamed under floodlights, slick from rain. He stood at the edge of the runway, hands in pockets, watching AC-130 rise into the black sky, engines roaring. Like thunder swallowed whole, he remembered Keller's smirk, the weight of cuffs, the officer's laugh. Then he remembered the boardroom, the cameras, the leak, how truth had dragged itself through every layer of denial just to breathe. He whispered to the wind, You see me now? In the control tower, a dispatcher noticed him standing there, motionless, drenched. Captain Avery, she called over the PA. You, all right down there? He didn't answer, just lifted a hand, a small, steady signal. Back home, Lena sat at her desk writing her next editorial. The title, When Truth Costs Too Much. In it, she wrote, Marcus Avery didn't ask to be a symbol. He asked to be seen. The system saw him only when it had no choice. Justice, when coerced, isn't moral victory. It's exposure under duress. But exposure is where all revolutions start. The article went viral within hours. The next morning, Marcus woke to find his front step covered in envelopes again. Only this time, not from strangers. One was from the Department of Defense. Inside, a commendation for exemplary representation of integrity under duress. He set it aside. Another letter, hand-delivered, unmarked. Inside was a single line written in tight script. You made me see it. I was there that night. I won't forget. No signature. He folded it once, slid it into his pocket, and left the house at the airbase. Mechanics greeted him with quiet nods. He climbed into the cockpit of a training jet. Familiar, clean, contained. When the engines came alive, the vibrations ran through his bones like a heartbeat. He could finally trust. As the aircraft lifted, the city spread beneath him. Lights, noise, history. Somewhere below, Keller's case file sat in a clerk's drawer. Somewhere else, Lena's article was being debated on morning talk shows. Up here, there was silence. Perspective. He whispered. Altitude makes the noise smaller. When he landed an hour later, the horizon burned with sunrise, gold slicing through smog. He climbed down from the cockpit, helmet under his arm, boots hitting the ground with slow, deliberate steps. He wasn't healed. He wasn't avenged. But he was unbroken, and that, in a country that had tried to make him invisible, was its own defiance. 6 months later, Keller stood before the judge again, thinner, quieter, no badge, no audience. The cameras had moved on, but the consequences had not. Judge Daniels read the sentencing terms. Thomas Keller, having pled guilty to charges of falsifying a police report and obstruction of justice. This court hereby sentences you to 6 months in county custody, with 3 years probation and permanent forfeiture of law enforcement certification. The words hung in the stale courtroom air like dust motes, small, inevitable. Keller didn't look up. The gavel struck once. Outside, the winter wind cut through the narrow streets. Only 2 reporters lingered. There were no protests this time. No chants, just the quiet click of one camera, as Keller was escorted to a waiting transport van. Lena watched the broadcast from her newsroom desk. The anchor's tone was flat, procedural. Former officer Thomas Keller begins his sentence today, closing a case that sparked nationwide debate about racial bias in policing. She turned off the screen. No, she said softly, not closing. Continuing. She opened a file labeled Avery Case Archive and uploaded the last of her notes. She wasn't done writing, just storing the proof before someone tried to rewrite it. Across town, Marcus stood on the tarmac again, the same airfield, different day. He was out of uniform, dressed in civilian clothes now, working as an aviation consultant for the local flight academy. His students, a mix of young cadets, men and women from every background, looked to him with a kind of quiet reverence. He didn't give speeches. He gave instruction. Precision.com, altitude check, he said into the mic. Copy, Captain Avery, came a young woman's voice from the cockpit. He smiled faintly. Just Marcus, he corrected. The headset crackled. Roger that, Marcus. The name hung there. No rank, no hierarchy, just personhood. Later, as the sun sank low, Lena met him by the hangar. She carried a folder under her arm. Thought you'd want to see this. She handed it over. Inside were excerpts from Keller's official termination file, unsealed through a public records request. Pages stamped, annotated proof that several earlier complaints had been suppressed. Marcus skimmed the lines silently. So it was all there, he said. It always was, Lena replied. They just needed a reason to look. He closed the folder. You're going to publish it? She nodded. Tomorrow morning. It's not revenge, it's record. He exhaled, long and steady. Records how the truth survives the next denial. They stood there, in the fading light, engines humming in the background. Do you ever think about him? Lena asked quietly. Keller. She nodded. Marcus paused. Sometimes, not the way people think. Not about what he did, about what made him believe he could. Lena looked away, eyes glinting in the dusk. You think he understands now? Marcus shook his head. Understanding doesn't undo harm. It just names it. A long silence. Then he said, but naming's where change starts. She studied him for a moment. You sound like you're finally at peace. He gave a dry smile. Peace isn't the same as quiet. That night, the story went live. Buried complaints. The Keller files. The expos traced every administrative cover-up, every supervisor's signature, every erased report. It didn't need opinion. The documents spoke their own indictment. Within days, the mayor announced a review of the city's police oversight board. Federal investigators reopened Keller's prior cases, and for the first time, the department released a statement that didn't hide behind jargon. We failed to protect both the citizen and the uniform. We recognized the cost of silence. Marcus read it at dawn, sitting on his porch with coffee in hand. The words didn't heal anything, but they acknowledged the wound, and acknowledgement was the rarest currency in America. The news called him a catalyst. He rejected the title. He didn't start a movement. The movement had been waiting. He just gave it a face that couldn't be denied. Weeks later, at the Air Force Academy, Marcus finally accepted the speaking invitation. The auditorium filled with cadets, diverse, sharpened, restless. He stood at the podium, the same poise he'd used in flight briefings, but this time there was no uniform, no rank. When I was stopped last year, he began, I learned something I already knew, that authority isn't the same as integrity. Authority can be given, integrity has to be proven. The room was silent. He let the pause stretch until it became, wait. I don't tell this story for sympathy, he said. I tell it because denial thrives in silence. Systems don't change by goodwill. They change when truth becomes impossible to ignore. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Not applause, not yet. Respect first. Then the standing ovation came, slow, deliberate. Afterward, a cadet approached him. She was young, black, her uniform crisp. Sir, Marcus, I just wanted to say thank you. He looked at her for a long moment. Don't thank me. Just remember. She nodded. Always. When he stepped outside, the cold air bit against his skin. The mountains framed the horizon, still, sharp, vast. He breathed in deeply. For the first time since that night in the packing lot, the air didn't feel like proof of survival. It felt like belonging. Far below, in a county jail, Keller sat on his bunk, eyes fixed on the flickering TV. The same speech played on the news. He didn't change the channel. When Marcus said integrity has to be proven, Keller's jaw tightened. Then, for the first time, he looked down. No redemption, just recognition, a flicker of what might have been conscience. Marcus never knew. He didn't need to. On the flight home, he looked out the window, the city lights forming veins of gold beneath the clouds. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, older, steadier, unbroken. He whispered to himself, almost inaudible, "Justice isn't what I got. It's what I refused to give up on." The engines hummed. The plane cut through darkness, heading east, toward morning.